In this video, we are going to talk about how to heal the relationship with your fearful avoidant parents. I am Pauline and I am so happy you are here because at a certain stage in your healing process, it can be good and healing to actually specifically heal the relationship with your parent. And there are a few things that are important before you start doing that because there are stages of um, healing that relationship with the fearful avoidant parent. And when you try to jump stages, so when you try to go faster than you're actually ready for, it can um, it can not help. It can make the healing go slower. So the stages when you realize that you have the fearful avoidant attachment style and therefore probably one of your parents or caregivers has that too. The first stage usually, and that can be short, it can be long, is disbelief. You are just kind of in a state of disbelief that you actually are this insecurely attached. And of course, there's such a wide range of fearful avoidant parents and therefore fearful avoidant upbringings. Maybe it's super crystal clear to you that your upbringing, your childhood was very unsafe and unhealthy. Maybe there was physical abuse, sexual abuse. um, then it is very clear that it was an insecure attachment, and the disbelief stage might be a little bit less intense or less long. But when you feel or always felt like you kind of had a good relationship with your parents or parent, there can be quite a shock of disbelief when you realize, wait, I am not securely attached. What? They do everything for me. They want to do everything for me. They've always been there for me. How can I not be securely attached? And the reason you're not, I explain in other videos way longer, um, is that there are just a set of specific things a fearful avoidant parent does to create a fearful avoidant attachment style in their children. So that disbelief stage can take a while, or it can be like 2 seconds and it's like, oh yeah, this makes sense. But that is the first stage. Then the second stage is guilt/loyalty. You feel guilty for blaming your parents. And this can even happen when you've really had a severely abusive childhood. There can still be a sense of guilt and loyalty. It can come in so many different shapes and forms. But that is the second stage where you're like, can I even really blame my parents? Am I not just a very bad and ungrateful kid that I do that? And this is such a logical stage, and also one you don't have to rush through. Um, but if you hold on to that loyalty, which a lot of times is actually instilled by your parents, then it can be very hard to heal that little girl inside of you, because when you are loyal to your parents, you are not being loyal to that little girl that's hurting, that really was wounded in that childhood. And it doesn't mean that you cannot be loyal to your parents again, or that you have to completely break your loyalty to them. You can see healing as also healing them, healing generations to come, but also generations past. And that in the end, your relationship with your parent will probably just even be better, be more real, be more truthful. And it might not be an easy road, but it is worth it for that little kid inside of you. I said girl earlier. That little kid inside of you. So take as long as you need in the guilt loyalty stage, because it's logical that you have a hard time breaking away from blaming everything on yourself and being a bad kid, because a lot of times, especially when we're struggling and we're surviving, parents or caregivers, if they ever gave somewhat of a sense of safety, can be that lifeline, can be that one safe haven. That was one of the reasons I had such a hard time letting it go, because even though I was struggling so hard, I was depressed, I had OCD, I had generalized anxiety disorder, there were so many things going on, and my parents were the ones that were always there for me. So how was I just going to flip this around and blame it on them that I had all those disorders? So that took a while, and it really took me realizing that I could help them, it could help them heal too. I had to do it for myself, because I am the only one that's going to be with me for the rest of my life. But also it can make my relationship with my parents better. And it's not necessarily about blaming them, but it's about just being real about what their behaviors and maybe beliefs did to you growing up. So being loyal to a fearful avoidant parent in not wanting to blame them for anything is actually being loyal to their pain, not to their core of who they really are. And that really helped me to get out of that stage and go into the next stage, which was anger. Because I definitely experienced anger towards both of my parents. And I did blame them, and I did go through that whole stage. And I think it really does serve a purpose, because anger gives you a voice. Anger gives a voice to that little kid inside of you who never had a voice, who felt so powerless and felt so hopeless. Anger is you saying, enough. This from now on is how I want to be treated, is how I'm going to be treated. I am going to heal. I am going to get better on my own account. I'm not going to do that for anybody else, and nobody has a right to my time and energy. And you sometimes need anger to break through those patterns, to break through the familiarity of being powerless and being voiceless. So I wish I could say that the healing process is glamorous and easy, but it's super messy, and anger can really help to give you power in that whole healing process. I'm not necessarily suggesting that you express your anger towards your parents. If that happens, it happens, but it is not necessary, I think, to heal, to express everything, because a lot of times your parent really truly did the best they could. There might be exceptions, but I believe generally parents really are trying the best they can. With the emphasis on can, they just couldn't do any better than what they did. And so to them, it might be very, very scary and confusing that you're angry at them, which will trigger their defense mechanisms, which could just snowball into chaos. So be angry and like write them letters, scream at them in your head, scream in a pillow, do anything to get it out, but not necessarily express it to them immediately, because as long as you're not healed, it's very hard to have healing conversations with your parents. So when you've had the anger phase, it might go into the blame phase. Those might go together also. But after a while, I wasn't angry anymore, but I kind of fell into the victim role, where I just blamed them for everything. And I just thought, well, I'm this way because my parents, I'm this way because they did this. And for a while, that actually felt good. It felt good to be able to not constantly think I'm a bad person. I do everything wrong. I make mistakes. It was such a relief to finally say, wait, maybe I'm okay. It was my parents that kind of instilled all this in me. So also blaming serves a purpose. And again, I don't recommend you express this to your parents, because again, they probably won't be able to know how to handle it in a mature and securely attached way. but it can help to get out of that belief that you are a bad person and it's all your fault, and you were a very difficult and bad kid, which you never ever were. So blame can serve its own purpose. And then you move into understanding and empathy. And that could just be because you realize that blaming your parents just doesn't help. It's not serving anyone, it's not serving you, it's not making you take responsibility for your actions, because even though it really could be that your parents did all those things to create the fearful avoidant attachment style, you right now are grown up and you make your own decisions in how to handle that pain, how to deal with that pain. And for a while, I was actually becoming more of a fearful avoidant because I was completely in the victim role and I was not being nice to my parents at all. And I'm not saying necessarily I regret it or I shouldn't have done that. I did the best I could at that point. But looking back, I see that it really didn't help, and I was actually perpetuating the behavior I was blaming them for. So I had to take major responsibility for what I was doing, and that's when I moved into understanding and empathy. And that meant also understanding and empathy for myself. So don't get that confused. Don't think it's just understanding and empathy for your parents. It's definitely also for yourself. Understanding where you came from and then what you can do about it now. Really deciding what kind of person you want to be, regardless of what your parents did or still do. And that really helped me. I'm not saying I never got triggered again. I did. I think that just happens with parents. Um, but I decided I wanted to be a kind person. And so I tried to be that in every single way. And I will get back to that because you might think, well, but then they'll walk all over me. We'll get back to that. The last stage is forgiveness. And there's a lot of talk about forgiveness in the personal growth world, that you have to forgive, and it's you have to forgive yourself, or you have to forgive to set yourself free. And there is some truth to that, but it can really make me angry sometimes too, because if you're not ready to forgive, you don't have to forgive right now. Like I said, anger serves a purpose, even blame serves a purpose. So if you keep telling yourself, gaslighting yourself that you're not allowed to be angry and you're not allowed to blame because you have to forgive. What I see a lot in the people that believe that is they say, oh yeah, I've forgiven them, but there's still so much pent up anger, which they are afraid to go to and actually release with techniques like the emotional freedom technique, because they believe they have to forgive them. You can't heal until you become truthful and real about your feelings and what you feel. So kind of forcing yourself to forgive is pushing away the feelings that are still there. And the more you allow those feelings to just be there and tap on them with the emotional freedom technique or release them in any other way, then you will notice that you start to feel more and more free, and it becomes easier to forgive your parents. And you don't have to completely heal everything before you can forgive them, but you have to get to a point where you are allowing all of your feelings, regardless whether they are negative, positive, towards your parents, and you can forgive them at the same time, because you see that they really did the best they could, because you kind of see their innocence, and you can still feel that anger coming up and release it, but not anymore in a blaming way towards your parents, if that makes sense. So those are the stages of healing the relationship with your parents before you start healing the relationship with your parents. Because I really do think I think I tried to talk to my parents about it in the various stages, and that never amounted to anything good, because you can't have healing relationships if you haven't healed. I mean, you can't have healing conversations when you haven't healed yet. So I had to just work through that. And also, a question I get a lot is, should my parents do anything so that I can heal? So have these conversations, say sorry. Um, and I don't believe that that's true, because that would give a lot of power to your parents. And what if they would never say sorry for what they did? What if they never want to have those conversations? Would that mean you're doomed to be uh, wounded and have pain forever? You're way too powerful for that. So it's not necessary. It's not necessary. If your parents are open for it, that's wonderful. If they have gone through a personal growth process themselves, that's wonderful. But it isn't necessary. So if it's in any way possible, it would help to get to at least a point where you have empathy and understanding for them, and maybe even forgiveness, because then the real healing in the relationship that is now here for you as an adult with your adult parents, that can really happen. So this can take a while, right? I mean, before you can forgive your parents, it might take weeks, it might take months, it might take years. All of it is fine. There's no timeline that you have to adhere to. But during this time, it doesn't mean that you don't say anything to your parents. You don't um, communicate with your parents. You do whatever you need to do to feel safe enough. If that means breaking contact for a while, then that's what it means. And you don't have to explain yourself if you don't want to, because nobody has a right to your time and energy, even your parents. Even if they raised you, even if they say they did everything for you and you're ungrateful, you really don't have anything to explain to them. You are doing this for yourself. I'm not saying you should, that that's the only way, but if that feels like the only or safest way for you, then that's what you can do. But what is definitely necessary is boundaries. And that can be very, 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 very hard, because the reason you have a hard time with boundaries is because of how your parents dealt with boundaries. And therefore, you putting up boundaries can feel very selfish for them, and therefore also for you. And they can try to make you feel bad about yourself for putting up boundaries. And yet it is very important. And you will notice that when you heal more and more, when you understand the fearful avoidant attachment style more and more, when you understand secure attachment more and more, when you understand emotional manipulation, which is very important when you start putting up boundaries, it will become easier to put up boundaries, to say, I don't want you to talk to me this way. I don't want you to say that. I don't want to hear that. And that is important. And like I said, if that means that you just don't have as much contact for a while, then that's what it means. And you can also start slowly trying to express your needs, what you need from them and what you would like from them. But please understand, this is not easy. It's usually not a walk in the park. It's usually not that your parents are very, very open and eager to facilitate this change, because change for them is scary. They're afraid to lose you. So what I did actually, when I started healing and my dad kind of freaked out, he went full fearful avoidant, and I didn't know back then what a fearful avoidant was. But I did at one point say, Dad, I love you. I'm not going anywhere. I want to heal this, and I want to heal myself first and foremost, but I also want our relationship just to get better. And that really helped him to know that I wasn't leaving him, that I wasn't rejecting him, because you might not even realize that, but a lot of fearful avoidant parents are actually really scared of that. So confirming that you aren't going to leave them and that you want to work this out with them can really help in being able to express needs and also set up boundaries. But I mean, that is hard, and I'm not asking you to immediately be able to do that and feel like a failure if that doesn't work. That would be very logical. But boundaries and needs are very, very important. And that's actually what is healing the relationship. You creating the relationship for as far as that possible that you want. You are showing your parents how you want to be treated. Um, and that might take some figuring out on your part too. What do I actually want? How do I actually want to be treated by them? What do I not want anymore? And there will always come a point where you realize that your parents are just people. And there's actually probably several points in time where you realize that and you're like, ah, shit. I really want them to give me this and they just can't. They just won't. And all those moments are actually blessings because then you take more responsibility for yourself and you create what you lacked and what you're not getting from them. Because the fact that they don't give it to you doesn't mean that that need is never going to be fulfilled. You just find ways to fulfill it for yourself through other people or through other ways. There are always ways. So, yeah, healing the relationship with a fearful avoidant parent is hard. It is not easy. But I now got to a point where I see my parents are just people and they really did try their best, and I moved into appreciating them and being grateful for what they are giving me and what they have given me, which was very, very hard because I lived in blame for a long time. But I do see that that's changing our relationship a lot. But again, I don't want you to rush to that and think, oh, I just have to be grateful for everything, because you are healing for you. That is first and foremost the most important thing. And your parents are grown-ups. They are very grown-up. They are more grown-ups than you are. So they have to find their own way to deal with you not being what they want, or you not, they not having you under control the way they want. They will figure out a way. They will figure out a way. And what I usually notice is that when people heal themselves, when they heal the fearful avoidant attachment style in themselves, they kind of exude this calmness and also strength, where when they put up boundaries, after a while, parents are just like, oh yeah, sure. They just accept it. So the more strong you feel inside of yourself, the more you've healed inside of yourself and not get triggered, the easier it actually becomes to recreate or heal the relationship you have with your parents right now. Okay, that was a lot. Let me know in the comments below if this was valuable to you. I know this is hard. Oh, one last thing. You might live at home with your parents still, and I sometimes get asked if is it possible to heal while you're still living at home. It is possible, but it is hard because you get triggered constantly, and sometimes, stepping back, being away from your parents can actually bring you different perspective, which helps a lot. So you can still try to put up boundaries, but it is hard. It really is hard. If you have a possibility to take a step back, to move away, to have that perspective, it will really help. But don't postpone your healing just because you're living at home. You can definitely start healing already. All right. Again, let me know if this was valuable. And as always, I am so happy you are here, and I will see you in the next one.